Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. It's a podcast where we break down and celebrate the film Young Frankenstein, one cop-storming stage dive at a time. I'm Alan Sanders, your host.
And I'm Walt Murray, your co-host.
And joining us for the very first time from Seinfeld Minute is Dave Delassandro. Dave, welcome to, a storming riot in Opera House in Transylvania.
Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you here. You know, Seinfeld made an entire run having shows about absolutely nothing. And there are times when I feel like doing a podcast 1 minute at a time is perfect for that world because we must have way too much time on our hands.
Yes. It's a perfect overlap.
So tell us a little bit about your background with Young Frankenstein. Every time we bring a guest on for the first time, try to get their thoughts in terms of the film, in terms of their favorite comedies, where does this fit, and what are your recollections of the film in general?
Let's see. I probably saw it after I saw Blazing Saddles in probably high school, I would say. It didn't really make a huge impact on me at the time, but years later I came to appreciate really good comedies like this, and I was able to appreciate it. I mean, it's a hilarious movie, but very subtle at times, which is something that you don't really pick up on the first time you watch a movie, is the subtle jokes that kind of happen in the background or kind of under your breath that you don't catch. That's some of the funniest things.
Yeah, one of the things we've chatted about, especially going through this 1 minute at a time, is you catch those and it makes the movie so much more rewatchable that you now know kind of what's coming. So now the second time and the third time and the fourth time, you're not only prepared for it, you can't help yourself from giggling knowing what's still coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Like in the next minute we'll be covering, there's a little bit there that I never caught the first time, but we'll get to that soon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, let's remind everybody where we are. When we last left, Walt, we found apparently there's a vegetable stand somewhere out in the lobby because everyone is chucking giant heads of leaf lettuce. And so we continue with the meltdown as the doctor is getting knocked onto his butt into what looks like a pile of lettuce. I guess that's the Franken salad happening over there. And we are going to end with Inga cheek to cheek with the doctor saying, "Oh, doctor, I feel so terrible." And kind of a lot of yelling and screaming and just wah, wah, wah in between. So it's going to be an interesting minute to talk about.
Yeah, I think this is the loudest minute of this movie so far.
Well, let's remind everybody that when we last left, Dr. Frankenstein, or I guess now he's adopted Frankenstein, was really getting ticked off with his monster, saying, you're ruining my performance. It's about me. You are my creature. I want you to do what I tell you. We apparently get to see what his creature thinks about being bossed around.
Yeah, the creature doesn't
appreciate it too much.
No, he does not.
No, he finally has had it. He shoves him in. He actually does that stage slide a little bit right into that pile of lettuce, and he's just sitting there. And I don't know if he's supposed to be knocked out or what. I mean, it's not that hard of a shove, but I don't know if he bangs his head or something, but he's kind of like down, and you see immediately Inga rushes over to him from the wings, and then from the other side where he was playing the piano, you've got Igor. Notice no hump there.
Yes, out of costume.
He goes running over to them, and, Inga grabs Dr. Frankenstein's hand, starts trying to pat it. Igor goes to him, all while the cops are trying to get this, 300-pound gorilla under control, who decides to do sort of a stage dive into the audience.
Yeah, it was before the stage dive became popular.
Yeah, in fact, this may have launched it. This,
it probably did. I think you're right. That was my first note I have for this minute is, why would this sophisticated audience, they all wear suits, formal dresses and such, where do they bring cabbage with them to these performances for some reason?
Yeah, I imagine there must be a fruit stand of some kind. I mean, I'm not much on high society, but
I would rather insulting that. I bet you that may have been a scene that they cut out of the movie, was the fruit stand outside of the theater, selling cabbages and carrots and whatever. I think I saw some carrots in there at one point.
Can I be honest? I have been to lots of performances. Some have been great. some not so great. I have yet in my life, outside of going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is a completely different reason, seen anybody throw anything at either the screen or the stage.
Yeah, nothing. I think I may have seen somebody throw popcorn one time at a lousy movie, but definitely not tomatoes or cabbages. I think that's only in Looney Tunes cartoons.
Now, I can go back a little bit in time. If we're going to go back to Shakespeare's day at the Globe Theater, they would only perform during the day because they didn't have electricity. So the only time they could have a play happening is during daylight. And all of the nobles sat up in the seats, but the ground where you had to sit on the dirt, that was where the quote, the groundlings would come in, the common folk who could take
groundlings. Is that where that came from?
Yes, the groundlings. They get a couple of hours off to go, and they would bring their lunch to watch a show. Kind of like, hey, let's go watch a show. We're on lunch break. And that's where the idea of throwing food on the stage really started to come from, these open theaters. But not since, even Victorian days have I heard of people bringing, heads of lettuce and cabbages and, I don't know, whatever other agrarian society growing around you,
Lots of green leafy vegetables.
And where do you put that in your tuxedo?
Well, do you remember the scene in the Blues Brothers where they were playing at the
the bar?
Bob's Hillbilly Bunker.
Bob's Country Bunker.
Country Bunker, yeah, Bob's Country Bunker. And they had the chicken wire in front of the stage.
Oh, yes.
Well, when I was living in Mississippi,
I inundated them with beer bottles.
Yes. And when I was living in Mississippi, I went in a bar there, and they had chicken wire in front of the stage. And when I was there, nobody threw anything, but that's why it was.
Is that what it was there for? To stop people from throwing beer bottles?
Yep, it would break the beer bottles.
There's a difference when your audience is drunk off their ass.
Yeah,
and a high society, grouping of Transylvania neuroscientists.
Yeah, I would say that nobody has ever worn a tuxedo in that bar. So it's a completely different audience from what they've got here.
Well, I know.
And by the way, being hit with broken beer bottles on stage, I would think that would, cut you up pretty bad.
It can't be a good day.
They kind of just brush it off like, man, we're fine.
Yeah, no, I would imagine that's not a. You're not feeling like this is the right career choice for you.
No, it's not pleasant.
When it comes to stage performance and just in general, I mean, we talked about this, Walt, a while ago when we were first entering the opera house. Even just the attitude of the audience, it's like a high society, highfalutin, tuxedo-wearing crowd choosing not to even give the sort of pity clap, just being totally, until he woos them, totally like not in his favor at all.
Not even acknowledging his existence.
Yeah, openly hostile.
Right, a hostile audience. They were not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, granted, apparently everyone besides Elizabeth in this entire story knows his backstory, but she doesn't care about him. Everybody else knows apparently the family history and all the problems that they've had. The 5 times before the city of, or the area, the region of Transylvania has been dealing with the Frankenstein creation. But I guess I have a hard time trying to go, he won the audience over. And then you're watching this ridiculous Irving Berlin song and dance number.
Yeah,
and
the dance is absolutely hilarious.
The minute you have a light bulb pop and he's not following orders anymore, the audience is once like a light switch turned completely off.
Well, and I noticed
they just watched him doing
light switch turned off.
Yeah.
They're watching him doing freaking cartwheel,
literally.
not really cartwheels. You call it the pinwheel move in tap dancing. I mean, he's just reanimated a guy doing more complex dance moves than I'll ever be able to do as a thinking, functioning human being. But the minute he goes, it's like, well, he's a failure.
Yeah. Well, and he says something about start the music again, and the music doesn't start. And so he starts trying to
he does that
dance.
weird sort of, I don't know dance moves really, but he does this weird sort of shuffling.
Yeah.
And it just goes over dead. And he's like, come on.
Yeah,
don't
and
embarrass me
everybody,
It is absolutely hilarious. And by the way, what is he's like stamping at the ground? He's not stamping on anything. It's just the ground.
Yeah, there's no fire.
The light bulb bursts. Yeah, they thought there would be like some kind of maybe candles that blew out or something.
No, I guess it looks like the light bulb.
But he's just stomping on the ground.
Yeah, it's like the light bulb blew, and I don't know if it was just some glowing sparks or something, but he just was making sure that, look, creature, there's nothing here. And if there was, I've stomped it out.
Yep.
Now, there's an interesting line here when he talks about to the crowd, about don't humiliate him. There was an entire scene taken out, Dave. I don't know if you knew this, but we talked about it a couple of weeks back. there was like 5 pages of dialogue that got taken out when they decided that they were going to have to go back and look at the notes associated with the abnormal brain. They came to find out that the researcher who put that brain in the brain depository said that even though the brain from this person was full of gentleness and kindness at times, if rendered humiliated or made fun of, would resort to a more caveman attitude.
Ooh.
So, because I couldn't figure out
it out for time or something like that.
Oh yeah, it was a really long-winded scene. But that's it threw me here. Why he would use "stop"? You're humiliating him. Like, why use that? Not you're angering him or don't provoke him. It's like don't humiliate him. And that was because of the earlier notes taken out from a scene that never made it in the final, talking about that this person would be very easy to get along with as long as you aren't making fun of him or mocking him. And if you think, Walt, back through this movie, every time he gets mad at Dr. Frankenstein, it's when he goes, he's got a rotten brain. He's awful. We need to, kill him. It's every time he's making fun of him. Mm-hmm. That's why he's raging. But when he meets the little girl, everything's fine. When he meets the blind man, for the most part, everything's fine.
The blind man. What a great scene.
It is.
We already got to that part earlier. Did we?
Oh, yeah.
Have we gotten?
Oh, yeah, the blind man, that happens before they capture him.
That was on his first
in an uncredited role.
Yeah, that was a couple of weeks back here.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. That's what I love about bringing somebody on for the first time, because you don't know what we've already discussed, and it's great having, because you're going to want to skip around on us, and we're trying to stay in the format, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's just every time somebody's been nice to him, even when the blind man's pouring scalding soup on his Schwanstucker, he doesn't go off the rails. Right?
He does it great, like he's about to scream, and it's just the face.
Right.
Everything you could see is in his face, and it was absolutely hysterical.
It's not until the fire, which is the only other trigger for him, that he actually gets mad and leaves the blind man's cottage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's always about, apparently, when you go back and look, about either the fire or humiliation. Mm-hmm.
And I was going to make espresso.
One of the great lines.
It's like a throwaway line. You probably improvised it on the spot, but
no, that was actually that was in the script. But we did discover, discover this is a what did we call this? A Transylvania fake news or something. That I forgot what we called it.
Yeah, because it's rumored all over the internet.
Yeah, you look everywhere. They say, "Oh, Gene Hackman improvised the line," but I've got the script here, and that was actually written.
It's in the script. Yes. It must be the delivery. He says it because it sounds like he just throws. It's off the cuff.
Right. Just he does such a great job with it, and such a fantastic playing a comic character. And I love the fact that, and we mentioned it back a couple of weeks ago, Walt, that Gene Hackman was pretty cool to be able to say, "Look, I appreciate you giving me this little bit part. I've always wanted to be in this in a comedy, but please don't put my name in the credits. I don't want it about me. I don't want it distracting from you." Which I think was a pretty cool move on Gene Hackman's part.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, newsflash: Gene Hackman's a pretty good actor.
Yes, he can hold his own.
Well, he had already been an Oscar winner by this point. So, French Connection.
The French Connection? Yeah. Great movie. Oh, my gosh. I saw that. I think I was in high school when I saw that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Not a very fast-paced movie, but it draws you in completely. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, and you see why Hackman won the Oscar for it, too.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of... Speaking of the script, getting back to this minute, there are a couple of stage directions and moments that shifted from the script to what we actually have here on stage. When the light bulb blows and Dr. Frankenstein decides to stomp it out, and he starts to tell the monster, "Come on, you don't leave me like this. I need you to step it up and start the music again," and starts doing that little sort of pseudo tap dance move. Apparently,
I think it would say it reminded me of the one dance move that they did in Blazing Saddles. I think they call it the what's it called? Some kind of shim sham move. I forget what it's called now. Dang it.
Yeah, I'm not much of a dancer, so
I may be a lover, but I ain't no dancer.
Oh, the Ethiopian shim sham, I believe, was called.
Okay.
Move that. He does.
We'll go with that.
Well, no, wait, my mistake. That was in History of the World. That's what it was.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember that in Blazing Saddles, but I'll go with that.
History of the World, my mistake.
All right.
Grabs a handful of sand, and he does like this little... all right, anyway, go ahead.
But wait, no, it shouldn't be about me. It should be about you. Apparently, a woman is supposed to scream, and then Freddy yells, look, just let me start singing. And he starts saying, trying hard to look like Gary Cooper. Another person screams and then throws a tomato right into the face of the monster, who then screams. And then Freddy yelling to the monster, look, that's your cue. Don't worry about it. Go on. This is nothing, I tell you. Go on, sing. The monster gets that tomato in the face, screams. Freddy yells, ladies and gentlemen, please, I beg you for safety's sake, don't humiliate him. So the whole trying to get back into singing himself, telling the monster it's his cue, getting a tomato in the face, all that left out, we go straight to just don't humiliate him. And I probably would have to guess this was a practical call from Mel Brooks. You can throw leaf lettuce on your actors and you're not messing up their costume or their makeup.
Right.
You start splatting tomatoes. You're talking about wardrobe changes, massive time lost to change out a costume and stuff. Probably a good idea to drop the tomato.
And with Peter Boyle's makeup, it took a long time to get that set every day.
Yeah,
So
I bet. Even in a black and white film, the tomato stain would definitely show up.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and especially when you start messing with makeup on the actors.
Another part here is right after he yells to the audience, don't humiliate him, he goes back to supposedly in the script singing,
5, 6,
which he doesn't
7,
do.
8.
Instead of just doing that, he starts going, super duper, come let's mix where Rockefellers walk with sticks and umbrellas in their midst, looks to the monster, and the monster looks at him like, I'm not going to perform for you, to which Freddy then yells, for God's sake, go on, are you trying to make me look like a fool? Sing, you amateur, sing. The audience yells, boo, get him off, fake. What else can your toy do? Then a monster gets pelted with eggs and more tomatoes. And then the monster yells at the audience. Freddy then rushes in front of him. Stop. I say stop. The monster is halted for only a moment by the authority in Freddy's voice. Freddy yells, go back. Do you understand me? I will not let you destroy my work. As your master, as your creator, I command you, go back. To which, of course, just like this, the monster decides to toss Freddy aside.
Yeah.
So you can see where they've kind of compressed it, gotten rid of a lot of the extraneous dialogue, and really kept it focused on the minute the monster's off cue, that's it. He's done.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to, well, I guess it would have been interesting to have a couple of those lines in there coming from the crowd, the, fake and all that. But
how can it be fake? They just watched him do this,
I know.
Song and dance.
Yeah, well, it's a crowd.
Well, to be fair, he didn't really do much dancing. It was more of tapping his cane on the floor and, a little bit of walking around.
The minute just before this one, I mean, they are in sync doing some pretty good tap dance moves.
Well, I would assume that most of the folks in the town
yeah.
know that this guy just got hung. The body just got hung.
Well, yeah,
recently.
The original body that
So,
was,
so they know that he's reanimated. But when you watch like protests on TV and stuff, the audience is not.
Wait, are you suggesting a mob doesn't actually use its brain?
Call me crazy.
So we've got a mob mentality forming here.
But I think we take mobs much too seriously in what their opinions are.
Well, at this point, when they're throwing more lettuce at him and the cop runs forward, and Walt, we commented back, I think last week when we were just getting ready for the performance and the cops made their entrance, we said, look at that one cop, kind of goes all the way down. Everybody else stays in the back. We now cut to there is one cop ready for him trying to get the monster to calm down. And then the monster decides to do a stage dive into all of the people and the authorities and starts fighting with them. But all of a sudden, he's not necessarily as strong as he's been portrayed earlier. It takes only 5 or 6 officers to really get him under control.
Yeah, it takes more.
Yeah, he kind of leans back and forth, and all of a sudden he passes out. And they carry him away.
Yeah,
and that's what I can't understand. Does anybody have an idea why all of a sudden did he use all of his mana or something? He has to wait for a recharge. Does he have to look for some cheese pinwheels to eat before he can go back into fighting?
That's exactly what it is. I think it's exactly what
it's like. He's completely passive when they get him up off the ground. Is that it? Is he afraid of heights?
Well, and I had kind of looked to see if anybody had a tranquilizer, but you don't see anybody with one.
Ooh, tranquilizer.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody hits him.
No, I didn't see anything.
He struggles and struggles and struggles until all of a sudden they lift him up. As soon as they get him on their shoulders, he's like,
yeah, he's completely
what's going on?
Out.
Yep.
It's and look at his face when they do a close-up as he's kind of being carried out. He's terrified.
Yeah.
Maybe he's afraid of heights.
He might be.
His eyes were wide open and he looks right at the camera, basically.
He just looks terrified, and he's got to be. Maybe we're getting this indication of him either being afraid of being dropped or afraid of heights, but he just instant paralysis.
Yeah, and
yes.
I guess one of the things they were probably doing is trying to avoid a drawn-out big fight scene or anything like that, and they just needed to move on to the next.
But you don't see the typical club him in the back of the head and he gets knocked out, or like you said, maybe somebody has a tranquilizer that he's the sheer act of lifting him up, he's wide awake. He's just no longer struggling.
And there is a guy with a nightstick, but he never hits him.
No.
So
no, it's more about
maybe they cut that part up.
Maybe. And I think that whatever it was that got him up in their arms and under control, they just needed to get out of there.
Well, the original stage directions in the script, which are very similar, we don't hear, at least I can't hear it if it's in the background. Inspector Kemp blows a whistle, the audience screams and scatters, the police pounce all over the monster and eventually drag him off a helpless prisoner. We don't see any just stage direction about lifting him up or getting control of him. And I do think, Dave, you're right. It is in a sense of brevity for the scene. We get it. He's going to be apprehended. He's under control of the police. We don't need some long, drawn-out Michael Bay type fight scene or, Zack Snyder kind of, 20 minutes.
Don't need that.
We recognize very quickly maybe the monster's getting smarter. He realizes, I can't beat them all. I'm kind of helpless and just sort of gives up for now. I'm going to go with he's scared of heights.
Well, and we don't, we know that it's an abnormal brain, but we don't know that it's necessarily a violently abnormal brain.
Well, remember what we said in the scene that was taken out, only if pushed to humility would he become more of what we affectionately call the caveman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, did you notice when the crowd is exiting right as that fight is starting, that all the lights are lit at the foot of the stage? So even the light that's supposedly blue is either relit or
back.
Whatever.
It's whole again.
It's kind of earlier in the minute, probably at about 10 or 15. But it is funny that you have the monster raging because of the blown out light, but all the lights are relit.
Oh yeah. Right about looks like 10 seconds in, you do see that side shot of the stage as he's leaping into the audience, or already in the audience being pummeled. That all the lights are all lit. So. That's what happens sometimes. That's what we call that a continuity error.
Yes, definitely a continuity error.
Shot out of sequence, maybe.
And I love them. I always love catching those weird errors.
Right.
That's the kind of thing I never noticed when I was a kid watching movies. Is those kind of? I mean, I may have seen them a couple here and there, but now that's all I notice is continuity errors and mismatched shots and things like that. It's almost become a sickness where you can't not notice that kind of stuff.
I do the same thing. Like if there's a cup that's half empty, but and they come back and it's full or whatever.
Oh, my wife goes
smoking at cigarettes. They're halfway down and then they're full again.
Yes.
My wife gets
especially
mad
watching
at
things
me.
1 minute at a time. You notice all those things.
Yes, you do.
When we do the wipe to get into from transitioning him out of the theater, and we come to a shot close up of him with this manacle around his neck and multiple chain links holding him down. This is the first time I realize how young Peter Boyle was in this movie. Whenever he's raging or his face is still, even when he's making kind of like weird faces or kind of like the wheels are turning, right now he looks like a sad little kid.
Yeah, he does.
Well,
he does have kind of soft.
He's chained down. He can't move. He's sad, depressed. One thing I noticed only for the first time in this minute is there's a zipper like on his neck. Part of his neck, there's a zipper going across.
Yeah,
never saw it before. In all the 7 or 8 times I saw this movie, I just noticed that for the first time last night.
Well, when you go back now, you'll notice it's there several times. They never call it out. They never make mention of it, but it's there very early on after his reanimation. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, the DVD cover, it's there. How did I never notice that before?
Now, I haven't been to many, Eastern turn of the century towns and villages. Is this a typical thing to have a viewing area for the crowd to come in and yell at a newly chained prisoner?
Yes.
That is?
Having the window with the bars just high enough so you can look inside and yell at prisoners.
You can jeer and...
That might be a only in the movies type of a thing.
And it's like total nonsense. It's like... They're not making any sense whatsoever. It's like you just hear kind of half words.
Front yelling, completely incoherent.
Yeah, it's gibberish.
Right. Actually, at one point, you hear him say "filthy swine."
Right. He's throwing in every now and then like a word or something, but it's like not one typical sentence. He's just muttering a bunch of stuff with a layer of additional noise.
And is that the same guy who gave the Gabby Johnson-esque speech at the town hall meeting?
You know, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I kept looking to see if it was.
We'll have to go back and see if he's wearing the same lederhosen.
Yeah,
right.
Because this guy's wearing some, which you love. He's wearing some kind of funky wide brim hat here.
Yeah,
but he's reaching through the bars and he's just doing the same gesticulations over and over. It's like Mel Brooks just said, "I need you to do this, the just same 5 or 6 moves over and over until I yell cut."
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually a term for that where there's like a crowd murmuring kind of a thing where you just speak incoherently just to have it be in the background. I can't think of what the word is, but I was thinking all night, what is that word? And I couldn't think of it. Some kind of it's not looping, but it's something similar to that where there's a certain term for talking incoherently in the background. But I can't think of it. If anybody can identify that word, write us in and let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Great place to...
It's actually, I was going to say, if you've ever been to Universal Studios, the term is called Walla Walla. It's for creating... Walla Walla.
That sounds right.
It's the atmospheric crowd background noises you see in movies and film. And what they'll do is they'll bring in a crowd of people. And what's funny about this, and we've done this at Universal Studios in one of the soundstage tours where they show you how they do Foley effects and sound effects. They broke the audience up into 3 sections, and they all gave us something to say over and over again. And one group gets things, like watermelon, 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 peas and carrots, peas and carrots, peas and carrots, and something like that. And they recorded it all together. And then when we got done, they said, okay, now let's play it back. And it just sounds like hundreds of people gathered in an audience talking. You can't make any one thing out, but we just recognize it as background chatter.
So like a group of 10 people that make it sound like a group of 1,000.
Yeah, just with layering and looping, absolutely. And they're just repeating the same 4 or 5 nonsense phrases together back and forth. But when they do it, and they have, they'll tell you, say, okay, kind of go up a little, down a little, down a little, and you're making nonsense. But when you mix it all together, it's got that same ambient quality as if you've walked into a large, theater of people just murmuring.
Huh.
When you're in that scene when Jack walks into the gold room in The Shining and they have those hundreds of people in the background just kind of doing that, making that kind of a noise.
Well, I'm just going to start saying peas and carrots all the time now.
Peas and carrots. Hey, side note, P's and Q's. Do you know where that, that phrase, mind your P's and Q's?
Uh-huh.
You know where that comes from?
I think I know where that's from.
I mean, it's not 100%, but this is the closest anybody comes to knowing this phrase. And Walt, since you and I are beer drinkers, I don't know, Dave, if you are, but this comes from the old English pubs where you could order your beer in pints or quarts.
Pints or quarts.
Oh, huh.
And they would track on a board. Because if you wanted to run a tab, you could just say, could you just put another pint on my tab or another quart on my tab? Well, they said always mind your P's and Q's that somebody didn't actually put one of their pints and quarts on your tab.
Interesting.
So keep an eye on the board up there. Oh, Walt's trying to put his pint on my tab. No, sirree. I keep my eyes on my P's and Q's.
I thought it came from early typewriters where P's and Q's look very similar, but, a P is a backwards Q, basically, on a keyboard, on the old-fashioned typewriter. So they look similar, but you better mind you don't hit the P when you mean to hit the Q.
I guess.
But yours makes more sense.
Yeah, I'm going to go with mine because it's got, as a major component to the story, drinking in a pub.
That's what I was going to say. It's got beer included, so I'm in.
Drinking wins.
Comes in pints? Yes, it comes in pints.
What's that? This, my friend, is a pint. It comes in pints? Oh, I'm getting one.
So anyway, just a little side step. When you mentioned peas and carrots, I started thinking P's and Q's, and it got me into that little... That's just how my brain
works. Wait, was that in English pubs you were saying?
Yes.
Or American pubs?
English. This would have been back in Shakespeare's day.
Shakespeare time, they measured things in quarts? I thought that was an American thing.
No, we got that's all English measurement. That's why we still do a lot of the English measurement here.
Pints and quarts?
I believe so, yeah. That's the last time I researched this, looking up where does that phrase come from. It came from old taverns and pubs where you had to keep track of your pints and quarts.
Yep.
A lot of expressions came out of pints. It came out of pints. It came out of bars back then, I'm sure.
Yeah,
and they still do today.
Cash on the barrelhead, I believe, was another one.
Yep.
Where you would have to pay for stuff in cash, and they would only accept cash, and it would pay you on top of a barrel for you to haul it away and take it to the pub.
Exactly. So it's cash on the barrel head. I love looking at the etymology of words and phrases. Every now and then it's just kind of fun to go into. But we have digressed after this whole Walla Walla background crowd effect noise.
Yes, it's back to the show.
This is actually a really cool shot, Walt.
Oh,
it's one of those things where if we don't have the audio up and we don't hear how nonsense it sounds to have this person, and even if it's an old 30s throwback Universal Pictures movie, this is a nice, very slow pullback because we've started, and Mel Brooks did not do this a lot in Young Frankenstein. We are right on his face, and as we pull back and we're shooting sort of up, we pull back to reveal the crowd. We hear them. We see Peter Boyle is, or the monster is all chained up. It keeps pulling back, and we realize, okay, we're in a prison cell. We're in a dungeon. We see the banded bar gate behind him. And then we see, as we pull all the way back off to the right, a lit torch on the wall and 3 guards playing cards at a table. It's a really nice shot.
And just the forlorn look on the monster's face.
Do you not feel bad?
It is a great camera move.
You do.
And by the way, the 3 guys playing cards, only 2 out of the 3 are actually playing cards. The guy in the middle, he barely moves at all. He turns his head to the left slightly, I think, to look at the crowd, but he doesn't grab a card. He doesn't play a card at all. It's just those 2 guys playing cards on either side of him.
Yeah, you're right. It's very much like he's just still as if he's the guard and the other 2 are playing.
He's not even watching the monster. I mean, that's what I think he should be doing if he's the guard there, is keep your eye on the monster.
It's always a good idea to put your back to a prisoner.
Guys play cards. I think actually they're playing gin rummy.
Could very well be.
You see the one guy grab a card and throw it down. You see the other guy grab a card, throw it down. Possibly gin rummy, but I couldn't tell specifically.
There's another dissolve here before we end this minute, and this follows the script pretty closely. Because as we get into the interior of the laboratory at night, Freddy leans, in this case he's not over the operating table, but his head is not in his hands. They've changed the stage direction to where they are sitting cheek to cheek. And Freddy does say, chained like a beast in a cage. And Inga, oh doctor, I feel so terrible. And that is exactly in the script. So we are at the very end of this minute where we are seeing that, where she says there's going to be a lot more to play out between the 2 of them. But you can tell Dr. Frankenstein is feeling really bad about the fact that his night, he's not saying here, which is kind of interesting, Walt, he's not saying that monster ruined my night, that monster ruined my performance like he was yelling initially. He's had some time to now think that poor creature chained, and he's basically like a beast in a cage. And maybe is this the first time we're seeing him actually care about the creature for the creature's sake, not for his own?
I think so.
Could be.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there maybe have been some mixed motives, but yeah, this is the first time I feel like he cares about the creature for the creature.
Getting back to that previous scene just for a second, with the monster sitting there and the collar around his neck and all the chains, it actually reminded me of the scene from the original King Kong when he was up on stage, chained up for the crowd's amusement. He kind of has a similar sort of setup where he's surrounded by chains, but I could be remembering that wrong.
You know what? No, you're absolutely correct. We actually referenced that last week. I said, is this whole scene leading up to where they're going to do the song and dance, is this sort of that homage to King Kong, where now you think you've tamed the savage beast, or you're there to put on a show for the audience, you're going to show off this creature, this monster. It's because they weren't going to have this, well, I say they. Gene fought so hard for this whole putting on the Ritz scene. Mel Brooks did not want it at all. He made Gene argue for 20, 30 minutes before he finally gave in and said, okay, fine. If it's that important to you, we'll put it in. But there's nothing like this in the other Frankenstein movies. The only thing that it looked like to me was a reference to King Kong.
Song and dance routine, those old movies?
No.
I know, that's crazy.
They should have.
But even the simple fact of, look, we've trained him. Let's put on a dog and pony show for you. I mean, this is very much like a King Kong moment where you're trying to think that, man, the hubris in this case of Frankenstein, I have total control of this monstrous thing. Obviously, King Kong a lot bigger and wider, but don't forget, even Dr. Frankenstein called him a gorilla.
Yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right. But it definitely does have that same feel.
What I say not that long ago, I think when we had Tom Taylor on, instead of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's 6 degrees of Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
At some point, everything comes back to Young Frankenstein.
It does.
Well, Dave, as we begin to wrap up this 1 minute, we've still got another minute to go here before we wrap up the week, and there's still more going on between the Doctor and Inga. Before we tease what's coming up tomorrow, is there anything in your notes that we didn't cover for this minute?
Yes, one last thing about the previous scene, the putting on the Ritz dance routine. I'm glad that he decided to go with the updated lyrics of the song, because if you ever looked up the original lyrics to them, they're rather racially insensitive.
Yes, they are.
I think it was originally written in the 20s or 30s.
It was in the 30s.
Okay, the 30s, yeah, and they talk about, I don't remember them specifically, but the audience can look them up themselves if they're really interested. But glad that they went with the updated lyrics from the late 40s. Irving Berlin updated it. So
yeah, the original was I think 1930 itself, and Fred Astaire was in that putting on the Ritz.
Yes,
and then it was updated, as you said, I think in the early 40s?
I think it was 47.
Late 40s,
I looked it up last night. I think it was 47.
We'll go with that. You know
what?
It's a podcast. You have to believe us because you heard it on the internet.
That's right. So everything is 100% true.
Yeah, I am glad they went with those lyrics, and which is funny being a child of the 80s when they had that sort of remix of that song that came out.
Oh, Tacos?
Yes, Tacos putting on the Ritz.
Boy.
It's the same lyrics, and so those are the lyrics that I already knew. So when we see this throwback, to me, that's the lyrics I always knew. I didn't know the prior ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the video that Taco made, he actually has, I think he has some background singers in blackface.
Really? Wow.
A type of entertainment that I'm glad is very rarely used anymore. First of all, it's just not funny, and secondly, it's highly insensitive. So just stick with the funny and stick. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
All right, Walt, for you, anything else that you have in your notes for this minute that we have not yet discussed? Minute number 84.
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. I think this is another, not as pivotal as some of the others, but definitely makes a little turn in the direction of the movie and puts us on tracks as we're headed towards the end, believe it or not.
Well, I will be I tell you, as we end this one with the Doctor and Inga looking all close and intimate, I'm interested for two reasons. One, the one we talked about, that he seems like maybe for the first time truly caring about the creature, not for himself, but for the creature's sake. But I'm interested in where this is going between Inga and the Doctor, because he's so far been completely oblivious to any of her affections and her moves toward him. So come back tomorrow, because for minute number 85, we are going to continue the conversation where Dr. Frankenstein asks if I could find a way, and we will end with the beginning of the lowering of the lift that we last saw, raising the creature to the heavens, but this time it's lowering with Frau Bluka watching. Before we go, Dave Delassandro, you've been our guest today, Seinfeld Minute. Tell folks where people can learn a little bit more about your podcast.
Yes, the website, SeinfeldMinute.com. All the information is there. There's an iTunes button you can subscribe with. There's information on the music we use. Everything's there. SeinfeldMinute.com.
And Walt, if somebody is listening to us and they want to learn a little bit more about what we've done so far for season 1, where can they go?
Yeah, the best place to go is to join us over on Facebook, facebook.com/The Wilder Ride. There's some conversations going there, and then you can also link from there into our listeners group. And in the listeners group, there you're going to see all kinds of stuff. You're going to get more in-depth discussions. You're going to get some production pictures. You're going to get other information on Gene Wilder and other folks involved in the movie. And also, if you have some questions or some things that we didn't cover, that'd be a great place just to point out something. I was going to say someplace we made a mistake, but that's not really.
Oh no,
yeah.
We've already had that happen.
But anything else? That,
I don't know. I don't want to call it a mistake. We've been told we misinterpreted other people's motivations, but
yes, that is true. That is true, and we may have.
We didn't, but hey,
we didn't. But maybe we did. And so anyway, great place for those types of discussions, and join in with the other folks who are along with us on this Wilder ride.
All right. Well, then join us again tomorrow for minute number 85 here on the Wilder Ride. I get my kicks above the waistline, sunshine.
I get my kicks above the waistline, sunshine.
All right, I'm going to hunk some lettuce at you.
A head of lettuce? Would that be a sweet head?
No, not this one. This is a rotten head that I'm going to kick in.
Rotten? Oh.
blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits, putting on the Ritz. Different types who wear a day coat, pants with stripes and cutaway coat, perfect fits, putting on the Ritz.